Hey everyone, so I am here with Newslog's Caitlin Johnstone, and she is one of the best journalists in the country right now. If you're a progressive, she is absolutely killing it on Newslog. So Caitlin, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, no worries, Mike. Thank you so much for having me. This is a real honor.
Well, thank you. It's great to have you. So one thing that I wanted to ask you about is, if you read a lot of your work, you refer to the deep state. So I wanted to know if you could just kind of explain to us what the deep state is and why it's significant.
Right. Well, the deep state is the unelected leadership of the US, and in turn, the world, like the planet, pretty much is ruled by these people through neoliberalism and a kind of like a coming together of forces, the military-industry complex, the corporates, the pharmaceuticals, and just the people who are not thrown out of government when government turns over as well. There's, a lot of civil servants there that have maintained their positions there for, many, many years. And so there is, and you will see that in the statistics, that the will of the people is not being enacted by the voters in the US anymore. There's a great little video that I can't remember the name now, but like it shows, there was stats that really, if the American people want something, that doesn't mean they're going to get it. They've got like a coin toss whether or not that will actually happen. But if people over a certain amount, the top 1% want something, then that will be enacted in a very normal way, in a way that we should see in a democracy. So in effect, we're being ruled by money, and not just America, but the planet through trade agreements and things like that. Then there's this powerhouse of people who actually dominate everything. So that's the deep state, and there's many names for it. The deep state's not one that my readers like that much because it sounds all oogly boogly and there's people out there in Bohemian Grove and singing and dancing to Satan and stuff. It's nothing to do with that. It's nothing like that. There are just people whose will is being enacted over the planet because they have a lot of money. And this is a game of Monopoly. They've won, but we haven't stopped playing yet. And they're actually driving us towards human extinction. And that's my problem. If they were benevolent dictators, maybe, but they're not. We're going straight towards a climate chaos. We're going towards World War III. That their agenda is very clear, and it is not pro-human. It's very anti-human. So we need to stop this. We need to actually arrest this in its tracks and bring back the will of the planet to the will of the people.
Absolutely. So yeah, no, I think that's a great explanation. And you wrote an article recently about how Donald Trump, you said he was neutered by the deep state because he ran as this anti-establishment candidate, and even though he had a lot of egregious domestic policies, internationally there were some good things about Donald Trump, like he was non-interventionist with respect to Syria. But now that he gets in office, all of a sudden he's bombing Syria. During the campaign he said, "I love WikiLeaks," and now he's okay with Julian Assange being arrested. So you kind of talk about how Donald Trump has given in to the deep state. Why do you think this is? I mean, do you think it has to do specifically with money? Why is it that Donald Trump, just within the span of 3 months, has already given in?
I don't know, and I don't know if it matters because I don't know how they do this, but they do it every time. And we just had to make sure that we knew when it had clearly happened. So there was, and Syria for me was the big tipping point. That was a huge part of his campaign. But we also saw how the Liberal establishment had wedged him on that issue, and had regular Democrats like screaming for him to attack Russia, or show us you will attack him, or you're weak, you're Putin's puppet and stuff. I don't know why you do that to a narcissist. They know that he, they went through the whole election knowing that he was a narcissist and prone to, they were worried about him going to war, and then they actually goad him into it, which I found really weird. But anyway, I don't really know how they do it. But the important thing is that it is done. And I think the Julian Assange thing was especially creepy. Like, he said that he didn't even know that that was the story. He didn't know that that's what was happening. And when the journalist asked, well, how do you feel about that? He's like, yeah. I felt like a horrible, like a downtrodden, abused wife who's like, oh, I don't care. Just give me my Zoloft. He's not there anymore. He's not there anymore in a very real way, and it's spooky. So, I had a secret hope that maybe he could come in like a wrecking ball. He did do some things in the beginning that looked very optimistic to me, but now he's gone. So there's that.
Yeah, and I think you're mentioning the TPP probably too. That was one great thing that he did immediately. He basically declared the TPP dead on arrival when he was elected. And I think a lot of us, progressives and anyone who was on the alt-right, anyone who's more protectionist in their economic policy was celebrating this because, the TPP would have been a complete corporate takeover of trade.
Yeah.
It was a disaster. Now, one thing that is really concerning to me, and I could tell that by reading your articles it's concerning to you as well, is just how you see this alignment between neoliberals and neoconservatives. So you see the left wing and the right wing kind of coming together to push war and, like you said, goad Trump into war. And part of this, I think, is, the media. You talk about media bias a lot and how they manufacture consent. And I wanted you to kind of explain how it is, in your view, that the media is really doing this. We can use Rachel Maddow as an example, how she's basically went from being someone who was relatively firebrand progressive to someone who is just in lockstep with the establishment and who seems hell-bent now on escalating tensions between the United States and Russia. So why do you think people don't question the mainstream media as much as they should?
I'm not sure why they don't. Other than there's this kind of respect for authority that we're bred, from childhood. We're taught to respect authority and respect voices of authority. And when you have a voice of authority telling you these things, for most people, that's overwhelming and they just take it on as truth. So I think that's kind of locked in from an early age. Why Rachel Maddow, goes from a firebrand to a puppet, that's a very complicated, I'm from a line of journalists. I grew up in newspapers when I was little, and I saw my dad and my grandpa go through this. There's a process of wearing down in the mainstream media, and it's just, if you have kids and you have a mortgage and stuff like that, you end up paying the piper, or just dropping off the radar. And I think, we just know, look, every soul has a price, and apparently it's about $7 million a year. So, and it's disappointing. And it's probably money. It's hard for me to understand why it would be just money, and social status. And also a lot of people just do it because to step outside the mainstream narrative is to make yourself look foolish. You will embarrass yourself. When I talk about the deep state, I'm entering into territory where people go, ooh, tinfoil hat, ooh. When it's a very real, provable thing. But that's what they do. They set up these kind of little shame walls where we can't talk outside the little boxes that we, Noam Chomsky said, you set up parameters and have a very lively debate between them. But once you step outside of that, then you get shunned. And they've been very careful about doing that, I think. And that's not just, that's a process of advertising and everything. We're made small by a lot of things. And so, when you're not only struggling with your politics and thinking this is not right, I don't like this, but then you've got the rest of the world telling you that you're fat or you're ugly or you're not like tall enough, or you're like, there's all these other things going on trying to keep us very small and very mute, like little animals frozen in fear. So yeah, it's a very complicated topic, but I think all we need to know is the effect it's having and what the medicine is. And I think the medicine is going towards embarrassment. Just saying it, just say it out loud. And if people can't handle it, then they drop off, but you will attract other people. Be a siren for truth, you know. Say the truth and just keep saying it. Be relentless about it. And the more of us can do that, the more of a consensus we'll build, because we're all pointing at the same thing. We're all pointing at the emperor going, there's no clothes there. And that will become the main narrative. See, all that the mainstream has got over us is that they can collectively kind of create this network of a narrative that we can't breach, you know. If they all agree with each other, then the voices of authority are telling us the same thing. But our little secret thing is that if we just keep pointing at truth, and then together we start gathering, you know, we will attract others who are also doing that, and then our voice will be the loudest voice in the room. And that's my big hope. And that's where I think we're headed. And that's why we can't lose. I mean, depending on whether we blow ourselves up first or not. That's my one little fear. But
right.
In the end, we can't. Truth will always win it. It will. But we've got to be really brave and courageous and go against what we're being told all the time that is right and true, and we need to say.
Right, and I think you're one of the people, like, I want to commend you for that, because you're one of the few journalists in the country that is speaking out against this Russian hysteria narrative, because you're one of the few people who can see, and I'm surprised it's not, you know, more widespread, that more people can see how dangerous it is to be saber-rattling against another nuclear power, to be trying to push someone who, like you said, the Democratic establishment warned us that Donald Trump, he's unfit to be president, he's a narcissist, he has an ego. They're trying to push him into a conflict with Russia, and it's really scary. So I wanted to ask, and I know I'm asking you to psychoanalyze different aspects of government and employees, but I just wanted to pick your brain, because I think you have such an interesting perspective on this that's just, you know, really enlightening. So I wanted to ask you about the Russian hysteria. So I want to know why you think the Democratic Party is doing this. Do you really think it's a part of them trying to do damage control and have some other explanation as to why Hillary Clinton lost, besides her just being completely incompetent and running a terrible campaign? Or do you think this really is about the deep state taking over and trying to push us into war?
Well, actually, I think, I started off when they first came out with that. I laughed. I thought it was hysterical. I thought it was really funny. And maybe because I don't have in my kind of makeup like a fear of Russia. You know, I thought it was really, really funny, and I kind of dismissed it as them just trying to go, oh, look over there, look over there, look over there, and they're great at doing that. They create a narrative where they point at someone else and say exactly what they've been doing. So they had been election rigging. All right, look over there, those guys are rigging our election. It's a very simple tactic used by abusive people all over the world, abusive and manipulative people all over the world, and we have a little collection of them in the Washington DC consensus, and that's what they do. The person who pointed out first that this was really dangerous was Glenn Greenwald, and he came in and was like, "This is not going to go well," and I think he was more onto the kind of background. Well, I think what happens is we all have fears and triggers and things like that, and they all stem from trauma from a long time ago. And so if you've been a little kid who was shoved under a desk and under air raid signals during the Cuban Missile Crisis, you will have latent fear about that happening, and you will have many defense systems. And I think he didn't say it in that terms, but he was right that the Russia-phobic switch was flicked on. And I do think that was probably meant. So I think it was twofold. it helped them deflect from the DNC leaks quite effectively. We're still not really talking about it. It's in the news at the moment because they're trying to dismiss the trial, but it's, very muted. Only really we would know about this going on. It's hardly mainstream. So they did a really good job of that. But look, they've been trying to create this consensus for a war with Russia for quite a while when you look back. So, yeah, I do think it was meant, and it was very effective. And I see now that they've kind of pulled the switch off Trump and the Trump-Russia thing. They were trying to get him impeached on that idea that he was with the Russians, which is actually bad news. This means that it's done its job. They've blackmailed him into, capitulating and doing exactly what they want with this threat that he would be seen as weak and Putin's puppet if he didn't. So that's, to see that die is actually really disappointing. I railed against it, but I didn't want it to die this way. So there's still people, who are really gung-ho on it and think that it's the pathway to impeachment. It never was. It never was.
Right.
And so now it's just a distraction for them, and they'll probably keep that going for a little while. As long as they can distract people, they're happy.
That's such a great point that you make, especially about the distraction, because, we see Debbie Wasserman Schultz tweeting out about how Russia rigged the election. And the irony is overwhelming to me when I see her, of all people, because why did you step down, Debbie? You stepped down because you rigged an election. So it's just, it blows my mind, honestly. And I think that really what we're kind of seeing here is, I don't know if the left lost its mind or if they've just been led astray by the establishment, but you wrote a phenomenal piece about George W. Bush and how all of a sudden he's this normal president. He's not a war criminal who should be in jail right now. He's normal. The establishment, the media, they're trying to normalize him. He was on the Ellen show. And so, you responded to a meme basically saying, with George Bush posing the question, do you miss me? And your response was, fuck no. Because this is someone who, I know that Donald Trump, seemingly he's more crazier than George W. Bush. And, give him time. We'll see if he's going to be a worse president. But George W. Bush was one of the worst presidents in American history, certainly the worst in modern history. So why is it that why do you think it is that, the left is going so far to demonize Donald Trump that they're even trying to normalize someone as reprehensible as George W. Bush?
Well, they're normalizing neocons. That's what they're doing. They're normalizing war. They've brought that whole little posse of vagina hat wearing liberals into being pro-war. Can you believe that? They are now the pro-war faction. That's amazing to me. Like, these are not pro-war people. I don't know how they're making this work in their head, but now they're cheering on this Syrian strike and the further conflict that's going on there. And it's just amazing to me how adeptly they do this. And I think the word news churn is a very interesting one, because I think that's what we need to notice here is that they can tip you on your head just like you're in a milk churn. They just keep churning you around, and one day you'll be like pro-war and the next day you'll be anti-war. One day you'll be pro-war. And with that kind of like churn situation, they are making heroes of Dick frickin' Cheney and, John McCain. They became their kind of, oh, it's really tragic. I'm sorry, Mike. It really hurts. It hurts my body. So, yeah.
Democrats use, the reluctance of progressives, and they basically told us, they said, how can you guys not be on board with this Russian narrative if even someone who is conservative like John McCain is on board? Why would he be on board with that? Why would John McCain, of all people, want to get behind, saber-rattling against Russia? It couldn't possibly be that he wants to invade every single country on the planet, right? It makes me feel like I'm going crazy. I don't know if it's the same for you.
Oh, it is, and I think that's what they want to do to us. They want to turn us crazy. They want to make it, the people who are seeing this and going, hang on, I'm not in touch with reality. If that's what they think's going on, then, and if you're isolated, see, this is the internet. This has kind of joined us all up, and now we're able to say, hang on, that's really weird. So we can actually say, no, the emperor really doesn't have any clothes on, does he? He doesn't. I've been watching, and that's definitely his Tokli, and it's just hanging out there. So, yeah, I think it's very important that we keep talking about it. We keep pointing it out. We keep pointing out the weird things, especially about John McCain. That was just tragic. Like, how do you not see that he has his own agenda, and they had a very clear agenda for many, many years now, and that he hasn't changed, you have. Like, suddenly you're sidling up with a warmongering neocon and calling yourself the resistance. Like, how do you look across the barracks, and see there's Hillary Clinton, Neera Tanden, there's John McCain, Dick Cheney, George W. Bush. Here I am standing, viva la resistance! How do you not kind of step back and go, oh my God, maybe I'm on the wrong side of this? But people don't. It's really weird. And they affectionately kind of, meme them up and stuff. And I saw it happening with George W. Bush a little bit earlier than that too. They talked about his, paintings of his feet. Have you ever seen his paintings of his feet?
Right.
I mean, they're very funny and kind of cute, but also, like, they're the works of a man with serious dementia. Like, he's not someone you should trust the opinion of, and you never should have. We know that now. Terrible, terrible instincts, or whatever he was doing. Right.
He's a murderer. It's that simple.
He's a murderer. Yeah.
He should be in jail right now. And you made such a great point. I wanted to point out in one of your articles, the same one about Bush. You said if George Bush did, or if another country's leader did what George Bush did, the United States did regime change in that country. That perfectly illustrates, I think, just the hypocrisy and how we're not able to get out of this bubble and see how the world views us. I think it's difficult to me because, we view, I don't know if you caught the same thing from the mainstream media about how when they were kind of goading Trump on to intervene more in in Syria after he bombed them, the whole notion was that, this was a humanitarian move. We had to help them out. We had to come to their rescue, when we're the only ones really that see ourselves as the heroes here. When, if you poll people around the world, they think the United States is a destabilizing force. They think that we're monsters because we're constantly bombing other countries. So it's incredibly frustrating, and it really feels as though we're like one of the few who, our eyes are open and we see everything that's going on. And in the process, even though we know what's going on, it makes us feel crazy because everyone else is kind of joining up to push this same narrative. And this is kind of getting to a different subject, but I had to ask you about it. So you referred to Peter Dow. You said that he's someone who's akin to a royalist. Can you explain what that is to all the American viewers who aren't really familiar with that term?
All right, a royalist, being an Australian, so we're a little kind of outpost of England still. We have not a republic here. We're still part of the Commonwealth or whatever. And there is it's a pejorative here. To be called a royalist is to be called someone who kind of like brown noses the power structure of the British royal family here. And Peter Dow really reminds me of those guys. There's this great quote from Menzies, and I always fuck it up. I'm not exactly sure how to, I won't get it right. But Menzies was our prime minister for years and years and years. Long time. No term limits. Anyway, and he was a big royalist. He really loved them. And he quoted this 17th century poet, and I think the line is, oh my God, I did but see her passing by, and I will love her till I die. That's the impression I get from Peter Dow. He's just all, oh, yes, Queen
Queen Hillary.
Queen Hillary, yeah, he's a very interesting character. You know, like when you look at what he's done in his life and stuff, he's a really interesting guy, and he's obviously decided that Hillary is his queen, and so there's no critical thinking there. There's no perhaps she should be the leader or perhaps she should not or whatever. She's just the queen, and that's that. You just love her, you adore her, you deify her, and he really does deify Hillary. And I think there are a lot of people like that who really don't see past, you know, the fact that it was her turn. That really resonated with Democrats. It's her turn. What a ridiculous slogan.
They floated that as a real slogan. This is it's out in the book Shattered. They honestly floated that as a slogan.
Yeah, and it tested well.
That hurts.
Isn't that weird?
I didn't know about that part of it.
Glorious to me. Yeah, it's her turn. Hang on. I thought this was a democracy, a republic. Like
She's waited patiently, guys. It's time for her to be the president. Come on. Oh, it hurts so much. It hurts so.
Yeah, but there is this weird, you know, royal family type thing going on. And when you look back in time, hardly any one of the presidents they're all related. Right. There is a kind of an underground kind of genetic lineage going on there. And that's not strange conspiracy or, you know, like people meeting in black doors or whatever. That's just money. Money does that. The people who had a lot of money came over from Britain, and then they set up shop and stuff, and then they owned slaves and stuff, and then they got there was no such thing as white people and black people when they were, you know, slave owners and stuff, but then they decided to make that division and get them fighting each other, and they've just been playing us off ever since. And that's the thing. The divide and conquer has kept us fighting each other and not looking to where the actual power structure is. But I think the times that we're facing right now, you know, human extinction is imminent. A lot of people are starting to go, all right, hang on. Who can flip this switch and how do we change this? And I think we've seen, you know, over the past 10, 15 years, people trying to flip switches and going, all right, well, we'll just do something about climate change. Hang on, we can't seem to do anything about that. We'll just get rid of oil. Oh, hang on, we can't seem to do anything about that. And we've got to the point where the will of the people is so obviously enslaved, imprisoned, and not heard that people are really starting to look for, well, if we're not being heard, then who is being heard? And I think that's really important.
Right. Now, I wanted to ask you, do you think that this kind of political awakening, do you think it was something that was catalyzed by Bernie Sanders, or do you think we were kind of slowly building? Because I think we kind of saw a little bit of it with Barack Obama, but I don't think the floodgates were opened until Bernie ran, when, you know, the people who voted for Obama, like myself, were just completely frustrated with him. And even though his slogan was hope, I felt hopeless after I elected Obama, because someone like him who ran that, you know, progressive, hopeful campaign completely backstabbed us. So do you think that this is a new thing, or do you think there's kind of like a gradual build-up to it?
Well, I think that was the point. I think he ran on hope, but we know from all the emails, you know, he basically handed over all his appointments to Citigroup. And this is in 2008, you know, this is just after the bankers have destroyed everything, and he hands it over pretty much to he was saying all this hope and change stuff while doing the exact opposite.
Right.
And I think maybe that was the point. The point was to just strip us of hope, like just get everyone to go, right, we can do this, and then just and go into despondency, disappointment, despair, and just roll over, never try again. Bernie turns up and he ignited the hope again, and he ignited the hope on a really big scale. I think people could hear in the resonance of his voice that he was really speaking from the guts. You know, he's got such a gutsy voice, from the guts of the planet. And look, I don't know if hope can be killed. I think that's what they're trying to do, and they definitely got some ways away with Barack Obama. But yeah, I do think that he woke up everyone, or at least no, that's actually not true. I think a lot of people were awake but had no one, like, looked around the political spectrum and went, well, this is not going to change. All I can do is, be good to my friends and family and make it as nice a life as I can for myself and smooth the pillow on a dying world, basically. So a lot of people who had come to the acceptance that nothing was actually going to change were the ones who went, whoa, this dude, okay, what have we got to lose? Let's back him. Let's go in, all in, all in, all in. And there was this sense of just all in from a lot of people, like especially among the, like, I was in the Facebook Bernie groups, and there was just this, people were, and this is so destroying to me, especially now this DNC thing is coming up in the courts. People really did go all in, and their $27 came from coins, like there was people living out of their own car, like, who were donating to the Bernie campaign. And it's so infuriating to think that the DNC could just suck all that money up and then say, well, you knew it was rigged anyway. That's what happens. Like, it's just a political promise. Like, no one says we ever have to keep it, about the impartiality of the primary. I mean, how...
Right.
Like, how galling is that? That is infuriating,
right.
When people have thrown in everything towards this guy. So, yeah, I really keep fighting for them, as much as anything else. This really has to change. And the situation in America particularly, like domestically, is tragic. People are living just on a knife's edge, like an illness could push them over into homelessness. And that's just not... We were born on this planet as humans, as animals. We have as much right to the resources as the bird in the sky. There's no this money arbiter that decides whether or not you live or die is just wrong. It is wrong,
right.
And it's psychopathic. And to allow it to continue to the death of our species, it has to be stopped.
Right. It's a virus. It's disgusting. So I won't take up too much of your time, but if you want to, before we go, can you tell my viewers where they can find you, where they can read your work, and how they can support you? Because I know you have a Patreon page as well, right?
Yeah, I have a Patreon page. So that's Caitlin Johnston, just one word, patreon.com/Caitlin Johnston. And I'm on Newslog, I'm on Medium. I dipped my toe in there into the share blue of Medium. I had no idea, but I'm very much an alien in a strange world there. So yeah, and my Facebook page I'm really active on, which is Caitlin A. Johnston, and it's Twitter as well. I love Twitter.
Me too. It's kind of addicting.
It really is. It really is. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Sorry?
Oh, go ahead.
Twitter is important. They're all important. Get on there. Like, if you're seeing these things, get on there and speak, and just as loud as your voice can be heard, just say the things. You're right, they're wrong. Keep saying it, keep saying it, keep saying it. Don't worry if you're getting pushback. Don't worry if you get mocked or, that's not the point. Just keep saying it, and get on as many platforms as you can fit in, while maintaining your daily job and washing and eating and stuff like that. That's also
Definitely. Just speak with conviction. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Caitlin. It's been great. Big fan of your work. Everyone, please go check out Caitlin's work and support her on Patreon as well, because much like independent, YouTubers, she is a reader-funded journalist, which I think is outstanding. So thank you so much, Caitlin.
No worries. Thank you, Mike.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.